Most landscaping and hardscaping advertising doesn't fail because the ads are bad, right? They fail because the numbers behind the advertising just don't work and nobody is actually looking at them in detail. So if you've ever tried Google ads, Facebook ads, mailers, or anything paid and walked away thinking, man, advertising just doesn't work for this business, this video is going to explain exactly why that happened. Now, I'm Charles, and with Become the Authority, we work with landscaping and hardscaping business owners to systematize their marketing and operations so growth becomes predictable and profitable. Now, here's the core issue that we run into. A lot of business owners jump into advertising without really first understanding their numbers. You don't need to understand the vanity metrics, not impressions, not click. You need to understand the real numbers. Your typical cost per lead, the close rate behind every time you go out and communicate with someone, the cost to acquire a job, your average job value, and the average profit behind that job. And without those numbers, advertising is always going to feel risky. Now, let me give you an example using a little bit of simple math. Let's say you spend $1,500 a month on advertising, and from that spend, you generate 30 leads. That puts your cost per lead at about $50 per lead. So far, that's not good or bad, it just is, okay? Now, let's say your close rate is 20%. That means that 30 leads turns into 6 booked jobs. Now, your cost per job is $250. That's how much it costs to acquire a job. Here's where most businesses stop thinking. They look at the $250 and they say, man, that feels expensive. But the question that actually matters is this: what is the value of the job that you're actually closing? If you're closing a $500 landscaping job, then the math is going to be tight on that one, right? Your margins are going to get crushed very quickly. But if you're closing, say, a $5,000 hardscaping project or recurring maintenance contract, then suddenly that $250 cost per job looks like a bargain. And that's why advertising feels inconsistent across this industry, because it's not really about the ads, it's about the alignment between what you're advertising, how much it costs to acquire a customer, and what that customer is actually worth to your business. And most landscaping and hardscaping businesses fall into the trap of just advertising everything that they do. They get way too general. And that's where things start to break, because people will come through the door, but they might only want low margin services. And low margin services cannot get you through. That's where things break. Low margin services are not going to really move the needle as it relates to running paid traffic. It's just going to eat up all of your potential profitability. And advertising isn't going to fix that. It's just going to expose it. And this is why knowing your numbers is non-negotiable. You have to know your numbers. It's the difference between advertising feeling like an investment or a gamble. So here's the next part that we notice a lot of people miss. Even when the math should work, systems often make it work, or lack thereof, right? So let's go back to that example. You spent the $1,500. You generated 30 leads from it. But of those leads, some of them were phone calls that were completely missed. Some of the leads weren't followed up with quickly. There was no text message, no emails, no communication, right? Some estimates were sent out, but they were never followed up on. So instead of closing those 6 jobs, now maybe you only close 3. Now your cost per job isn't $250, it's $500. You didn't lose money because the advertising didn't work. You lost money because the system wasn't built to handle that. And as a result, you lost profitability. And this is where automations and back-end systems matter so much. Automations are not designed to replace people, okay? They're there to replace the inconsistency. They're there to make sure that every lead is captured, every lead form gets an instant response, and follow-up is happening without relying on memory, emotion, or just the general flow of the day. Estimates don't quietly die and opportunities stop slipping through the cracks. When these systems are in place, your numbers start to stabilize, and as a result, you'll start to see your close rate improve, your cost per job is going to progressively drop, and your advertising becomes predictable instead of of emotional. And that's why businesses that say they tried ads before often get very different results the second time around, because nothing really needs to change with the ads more often than not. A lot of people are running really good ads, but if you change the things that matters, things like your response time, your follow-up consistency, just your general tracking, and the visibility of knowing your numbers, once you can clearly see how much it costs to acquire a customer, how much that customer is actually worth to the business, and where the revenue seems to be leaking when it comes to your marketing, it allows you to have an easier decision-making process because you're not guessing about things anymore. You're not just reacting to things in your business anymore. You can start managing the business like a business instead of just a side hustle where you're hoping and praying that things go your way, right? So, final takeaway, advertising does not fail most landscaping and hardscaping businesses. More often than not, it's the lack of systems and the lack of clarity, and that's why automations are so important. When you know your numbers and you have systems in place to protect them, advertising becomes one of the most powerful growth tools available. And if you don't, it'll always feel expensive. And that's one of the things that we look for when we work with landscaping and hardscaping business owners. Not just should you run ads, but what should we be advertising? What do the numbers need to look like? And what systems need to be put in place to make the math work in a way that's efficient? So if you want clarity on whether advertising actually makes sense for your business and what you would need to change in order for it to be profitable, I want to offer you a free marketing and systems audit where we break down your numbers, your follow-up, and your conversion process. There's going to be a link down into the description where you can book with us. We're looking forward to speaking with you. See you on the next one.